My guest today is the wonderful Dr. Sarah Schewitz. She is a licensed psychologist specializing in, surprise, surprise, love and relationships. And she's the founder of the successful online psychology practice Couples Learn. She's been working in the couples and relationship and individuals to improve their love lives for over 15 years. And she has advanced training in the areas of attachment, conflict management, communication, rebuilding trust after infidelity, and even treating attachment trauma. She's been featured on Forbes, CNN, Bravo TV, Washington Post, Women's Health, Bravo TV. I mean, just a lot of places. You've probably already heard of her if you're in the space. She's absolutely a dream to work with, a dream to talk to. And I know that it was a hugely educational episode for me, and I'm sure will be for you too. You're listening to the Relationship Revival Podcast with John DeBach, also known as Mr. Spirituality. That's me. I'm your host, giving you insights and guidance from over 10 years in the field of this amazing journey we call romance. On this show, I go over everything you need to know about how to get into a relationship, how to get the most out of a relationship, and sometimes even how to gracefully end a relationship without pulling your hair out and going crazy. And occasionally, I'm even joined by new and old friends who are also relationship experts to bring you guidance and wisdom with new perspectives. Thanks for stopping by. Well, let's dive right in. I'm really excited to talk. First of all, how long have you been doing this?
I've been working with couples since 2008, so a little over 15 years now.
Yeah, that's a nice stretch. And couples, I want to just kind of jump into the lion's mouth right off the start. Why is it so hard? Because you have a group practice that you're growing and constantly looking for really good qualified people to work with you in your practice.
Yeah.
And I found this too when I'm reaching out to therapists across the whole world, not just America, and I find that people who really truly specialize in couples are hard to find.
They are.
Why do you think it's so hard to find someone who specializes in this line of counseling?
Oh, well, I think there's a lot of reasons. One, it takes a lot of mental energy and fortitude to be a couples therapist because you're managing a lot more energy in the room and you're managing two different personalities and then the whole dynamic of the relationship. So it can be pretty draining and exhausting for a lot of people. I think those of us that specialize in it kind of like the extra energy and excitement that comes with it. Yeah. I might have grown up in homes where we had to manage a lot of relationship conflict anyway, and so we got good at it. But as far as, and then, there's a whole business reason why as well, because couples therapy tends to be a little bit shorter term than individual therapy. So it's honestly not a great business model when you're trying to retain clients.
How long, that's a good point. I mean, how long would you say your typical length of working with a couple lasts?
Like 10 to 20 sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I find too, 10 to 20. And it's fun because my wife is a therapist, specializes in perinatal and in anxiety, and she says 6 months is where she starts seeing like real transformation for a lot of her clients. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know any couple I've seen for 6 months. I mean, they might come back, but like that's not a regular trajectory. Sometimes, do you ever have it where they break off and someone will stick with you on an individual level after couples?
Yeah, I do. And I sometimes have couples request that, but if it seems like they're going to get back together, which so often does happen, then we kind of talk about whether they want to keep that space for the couple or, kind of sometimes working with them individually can make it a challenge to go back to working together as a couple later. Yeah,
for sure. What do you have any crazy stories in terms of how you've treated couples, especially with the virtual space? Any kind of unusual, kind of fun stories that you'd want to share?
I get quite a few long distance couples, sometimes in different countries. Some folks who have met online and have had most of their relationship online. So that's kind of interesting. I'd say that's rare, but it has happened. I don't think
so. I have one for you. So
okay,
I have
great.
I have a new client. I'm going to pick your brain because it's one expert that I have in the chair, so I'm going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I have a client where they met online, but he's been incarcerated.
I had that too. Now that you mentioned that, yes.
And so they've only met once when they got married during visitation. And I'm doing these sessions virtually with one person on camera and one person just audio. I'm treating it a lot like a long distance relationship, but there are other challenges because obviously there's different freedoms that they just don't have when someone's just, off at work. Is there a different approach that you would have for something like this?
I didn't even move forward with it because having worked in the prison system as a therapist, I know how hard it can be for them to access the phones at a certain time or to have any amount of privacy is pretty much non-existent, and it can be so loud in the background. So, I think that, gosh, that is such a challenging
Yeah.
situation.
It was
And
incredibly rewarding for me. I mean, because I saw how much both of them were willing to learn. But yeah, it definitely is challenging. I'm not going to
yeah,
pretend that it wasn't.
yeah. So I think
But
you
you
would have to have
dropped the bomb.
flexibility, really. That's my main recommendation, is be flexible in terms of like cancellation and,
Sure,
what that
sure,
looks
sure.
like. But
Well, you just dropped a bomb that you worked in the prison world. Tell me about that. That wasn't something I knew before 10 seconds ago.
when I
So,
was starting my practice, I worked part-time in an ICE facility, immigration detention facility in California. And while it's not technically a prison, it basically is.
wow.
And there were low level, low risk detainees who were seeking asylum and delayed with paperwork, etc. So they were kind of in blue uniforms, and we had orange uniforms and red uniforms, and the red uniforms were ex-cons that had been picked up pretty much straight from prison and were brought to the facility for deportation. And they were, a lot of gang members and dangerous criminals. So it was definitely not a prison, but like working in a prison.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it probably, I mean, I think if you have that as your background, maybe couples therapy isn't as scary.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's talk about your approach to couples therapy. I know you're swamped and usually overbooked. So, but I'd love to hear, for people who can hear it from an expert who is at the top of her game, what is it that you come into a session with in terms of goals for the couple? Do you meet them where they are, or do you kind of invite them to come where you are? And are there different modalities that you lean on, or do you kind of pick and choose depending on the couple?
I do have modalities that I lean on, and I offer a free 30-minute consultation to couples, and I kind of tell them about that, and they can self-select whether it fits for them or not.
Sure.
I usually start with an assessment called the Gottman Relationship Checkup that does this full x-ray of their relationship. It's a research-based assessment that looks at all different areas of their relationship, from like how they feel about their sex lives and communication and conflict, and how well they can meet each other's needs and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, I talk about Gottman a lot on the
You
podcast. I'm a
do.
big advocate.
I mean, they're great, and they're just
Yeah,
such a cute couple too.
they are. They really are. John and Julie Gottman.
Yeah. So I start with their assessment, and then I move into imago therapy after the whole assessment process. And that
Interesting.
was created by another adorable couple, actually, Harville Hendricks and Helen LaKelly Hunt. And it's a really structured way of working with couples where they are facing each other and talking to each other in session for the bulk of the session, but I'm kind of helping guide the communication between them by giving them prompts. So if they're processing a fight, I might be giving the sender, one person's talking at a time, so I might be giving the sender prompts like what hurt me about that was, and what scared me about it, and what it reminded me of from my past, and how I responded, and how that response might have contributed to our disconnect. So I'm kind of walking them down this ladder of vulnerability. And the other person is just listening and repeating back what they're hearing. They're not interjecting, they're not sharing their opinion, they're not arguing. And then we switch and do the same, but in reverse, with the other person being the sender. And so that really helps with couples who have trouble communicating, to slow everything down and to help them validate and empathize with each other. Oh, I did miss those steps. The listener also validates and empathizes with my
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's the modality I use, and others on my team use different modalities. So we kind of have the whole gamut covered
gamut.
as far as
When you say
modalities.
facing each other, for people who haven't seen it, they're literally their chairs are what, maybe a foot apart, and they're physically facing each other, right? That's the imago method.
Yeah, they're
And,
knee to knee basically.
and you're just sitting kind of between the two, but a little further off and kind of prompting them. Is that
Well, in
right?
my case, I'm online, so the computer is sitting there.
So that was my question is how does it work online? Do you just have them use one camera and you watch from, your office?
Yeah, so they're using usually their laptop because that's easier with couples to fit everyone on the screen, and they put it on a table and get two chairs, and I can see them great. They can hear me great, and they're so focused on each other in session. I should be kind of a background presence anyway, so the
Sure.
online thing works really well with Imago.
Yeah. We had Mary Kay Cacero on here. She's in
Yeah,
Do you know Mary?
I do. I know her
Oh,
well.
okay. Yeah, she talked about ECCT and Imago. It was really kind of fascinating. So I'm gonna look into it more myself because it's definitely one modality I've never really explored that much. But I mean,
Helen and Harville's book, Getting the Love You Want, is really
have read
incredible.
that for sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
then you've
yeah,
explored it.
yeah. I just not as just not as someone bringing it into a session or
Yeah.
anything. Very cool. What drew you to it?
It just makes so much sense to me. The whole premise behind it is that we attract in somebody who's going to trigger our childhood wounding, and the goal of our unconscious is to get that person to change so that you can heal the wounds from your past and finally have the needs met that weren't met in childhood. And just through my own experiences in relationship as well as what I see in couples, I just thought, yeah, that's exactly what's happening over and over again here. So
Yeah.
it just really fits for me. And then I love the structure of the dialogue.
Yeah, that's always helpful. You kind of have like a roadmap for yourself and a roadmap for the couples, which
Yeah.
is kind of nice.
Yeah.
That's true. You talk about the things we're bringing in from the past. Let's talk. I know you deal with attachment styles a lot. For people who aren't, because we haven't had the chance to go over it yet in on the show. Let's go over a little bit about what you look for in attachment styles, and I know you even have a course about it as well.
I do.
So I'll take the opportunity to kind of pick your brain on it a little bit more.
Attachment is such a powerful thing to learn about, I think, because so many people have these repeating patterns in relationships and think there is something wrong with them or don't understand why they are the way they are or keep attracting the same type of people. And it's usually based on attachment style. So there's 4 different types of attachment styles, and they're kind of in 2 categories: secure attachment and insecure attachment. And in insecure attachment, there's avoidant attachment style, anxious attachment style, and then a combination one that's disorganized attachment style, and it's a combination of the anxious and avoidant type. And then in the secure side, there's just one, and it's secure attachment. And about 50% of the population is securely attached, and about 50% is insecurely attached. So your odds are 50-50 of meeting someone with either type of style. And
Yeah, it's a heck of a coin flip.
it is. It is. And I think the older you get, the more you'll find insecure attachment in the dating pool as well. So there's that to contend with additionally. Because
So let's pause there. When you say the older you get, so you're saying, just so I clarify, like if you're dating into your 40s, or what do you mean?
well, it depends when people get married in your region, but secure attached folks tend to be much more comfortable with long-term committed relationships and kind of partner up at the typical age for many people. And so the older you get, the more you're going to find people who are on the avoidant side, who are a little bit more commitment averse and not really, they're more like wanting their space and needing
Would
a
you say
lot
there's
of.
an exception for people who are divorced or widowed?
Absolutely.
Or
Absolutely. Yeah.
okay, got it. So
Yeah.
it's just people who've kind of stayed single, though they tend to have the tendency to have that insecure attachment type.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm happy to talk about a little bit about what each one is, if that would be
Yeah, for
helpful.
sure. For
Okay.
sure. Let's get
Yeah.
back on track there.
So secure attachment, like I said, they tend to be comfortable with commitment. They're also comfortable being alone. They tend to be pretty confident in relationships. They go into it expecting things will work out, and even if they don't, it'll be a positive experience. They're pretty easy to be with in relationship. You know, they can handle closeness, they can handle space, they have good boundaries, they tend to have decent communication skills. Just overall, kind of, they've had a healthy relationship with their caregivers growing up, and this is the basis of attachment style, is how you
And
were
50%
parented.
of the population, is this
I
healthy?
know. I might be making it sound a little more perfect than it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's pump the brakes a bit here.
This is generally what a secure attachment feels like. Certainly, there's a lot of room for improvement with communication in, I'd say, like 90% of our population, but
Sure.
overall, they're decent at relationships.
Okay.
And they were given that as a child. Your first 18 months of life really kind of dictates your original attachment style. And then from there, you absolutely can change it. But those first 18 months are pretty pivotal. So that's secure. Go ahead, were you
Right.
going to say something?
No, I was gonna pivot you to the insecure because I think we covered that. So
Yeah.
let's go over maybe anxious first.
Okay, so anxious folks tend to be anxious in relationship, as it seems like. There's a lot of push and pull. So they might push their partner away, hoping their partner is going to chase them to prove that they really care about them. They tend to criticize more frequently than other partners and just be a little bit more rejecting, but they actually they desire more closeness than anyone else, and they need more reassurance than any other attachment style. So it's
And
a
what happens in the first 18 months that causes an anxious style of insecure attachment?
one or more of their parents or caretakers is inconsistent with their attention. So they might be available and loving sometimes and then rejecting or dismissive at other times. And so the person just learns love is not predictable. I need to constantly be testing it and chasing it, essentially.
Yeah. That's such a huge problem in so many. See, now I got to read that book again. There's so many couples who come in where they, you hear like, I don't know how to trust him again. And it's like they put their partner through these tests. And now I'm hearing this going, maybe I should assign this reading, because it plays into that anxious attachment style very,
Yeah.
very much so.
The best book, I think, for attachment is Wired for Love by Dr. Stan Tatkin. He does a
Wired for
really
Love.
nice job of describing all the styles and not making anyone bad or wrong for their attachment style. I think attached tends to make avoidance feel like they're doing something wrong and they are terrible partners, and that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's a good little reading tip. Let's move it to the other insecure attachment style.
So that's avoidant attachment style. They tend to need more space, whereas anxious needs more closeness. And the twist of fate, as fate would have it, most of the time these two are attracted to each other. And so you've got someone who needs a lot of closeness or reassurance and someone who needs a lot of space and freedom together. And you can imagine that doesn't go very well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
avoidants tend to be a little bit shut down emotionally. They're not as great as recognizing and expressing their emotions. Their partner might be constantly saying things like, I just don't feel connected to you, or I don't even know if you like me, or I don't even know if you want me. They tend to idealize exes or chase an ideal partner that truly doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Which is why
Yeah.
they often stay single in search of this perfect person.
Right.
And
Would you say that those folks are also more prone to infidelity because they're chasing like a new thing, or is that too big of a statement?
I don't know. Yeah, I've never seen any data on that, and I would, I could say anecdotally that would make sense because they're often looking for ways to create space, whether it's being internally critical of a partner to kind of create emotional distance, or cheating, or pulling away and spending a lot of time alone, or idealizing an ex and comparing their current partner to that ex. There's just lots of ways they create mental space from their partner.
Super interesting. And then the disorganized is the people who are hot and cold, where they want the space and then they want the closeness. Am I kind of
Yeah, they're a combination of anxious and avoidant, and they typically have experienced some sort of abuse or neglect in their childhood that just helped them develop the belief and the kind of physical sensation that love is dangerous and it's not safe.
So if you're married or in a relationship with someone and you have a secure attachment style and they have an insecure one, let's pick kind of the kind of one of the ones that kind of have the most high touch point issues, which is the disorganized one. What would you see in a relationship like that?
Well, so secure attachment can tolerate all different types of attachment style and kind of accommodate to those. But what you might see from the disorganized person is disorganization. It's the least common of the attachment styles, but you would see a lot of push and pull. You would see confusion around just a lot of, even communication can feel confusing and disorganized. You might see a lot of toxic behaviors, abusive behaviors, even from someone with a disorganized attachment style, because that's how they were loved growing up. So that one will be a little bit more extreme than an
Yeah.
anxious or an avoidant kind of
And in your
attachment style.
therapy, when you're doing imago therapy, are you tapping into these attachment styles through the dialogue or through is that part of the process?
Sometimes it's not part of the process, but because I'm so attachment focused, I definitely bring that into my work. Imago is more about whatever, bringing the childhood wound that's being triggered into the dialogue about the fight. So it looks at attachment from that perspective, but it
Got it.
wouldn't necessarily label anxious, avoidant, secure, and kind of talk through that. I certainly do because I think it's really important, and it's, I
For the
blend a lot
couple
of
to kind
different
of
things.
understand on a cognitive level what's going
Exactly.
on. Right. Yeah,
And
I
then
get
once
that.
you understand and you kind of have a label for something, it can be really empowering. And then you can start doing research and you can start externalizing, like, okay, this is an avoidant behavior coming up, or this is an anxious behavior coming up. I want to be in a secure relationship, so I'm going to choose a securely attached behavior instead.
Absolutely. That makes sense. So what does your course go over?
Just that, changing from an insecure attachment to a secure attachment. It's called Getting to Secure Attachment. And it's all
Oh, that's
about,
beautiful.
so it's all about recognizing what your attachment style is. There's a quiz and there's a bunch of different descriptions, much more in depth than I just went into, of each attachment style. And then there's a whole section on how to create a secure attachment. We talk about boundaries, we talk about communication, we talk about securely attached behaviors, trust, all kinds of good stuff.
Sounds great. How can someone access this? Where is it available?
You can go to coupleslearn.com and just click on online courses and you'll see it pop right up there.
Coupleslearn.com online courses. Okay,
Yep.
awesome. Very
Yeah.
cool. If let me close with this. If you could teach someone other than attachment styles, because we covered it, if you could kind of implant something from your brain and your experience in couples therapy into each client that comes through the door that would make a huge transformative change in them, what would it be? One kind of nugget of advice.
I think one of the simplest and most powerful things to do is focus on one thing a day that you love and appreciate about your partner and share it with them, because it primes your brain to start looking for those things instead of looking for the things you dislike or want to change or want to constructively criticize.
Yeah.
And it really primes you to be looking for the opposite, which
I love the way you said that too. It trains your brain. I mean, your brain learns how to be in certain relationships and what kind of movement. I always tell people there's no such thing as stagnation in a relationship. You're either growing or shrinking in your closeness. There's no such thing as a flat line. If you're flatlining, you're dead. So if you're training your brain to criticize, right? If you're training your brain to look for the negative things, that's just going to perpetuate you on this downward spiral. And the same thing, like you said, if you train your brain to look at the good, and then I think you're right. Sharing it with your partner provides an opportunity for them to also empathize and reflect and do the same for you. And it has this exponential way of growing people together. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful piece of advice.
Thanks. Yeah, the crazy thing is you don't even have to train your brain to criticize. We do that naturally because it's a survival tactic.
Yeah.
We're constantly scanning for what's wrong, what can be optimized, what can kill us.
And it's not my fault. Let's not forget that. It's not my fault.
Yeah, but that's how humans have survived and evolved. But you do have to train your brain to do the opposite.
Wow. Great, powerful. So you don't need to learn how to be a critical jerk. That's the kind of
that comes
everybody's
naturally.
born with that. But it does take a little bit of training to learn how to be kind and see the generosity and see the affection and call it out. I think that's a huge lesson. Well, Dr. Sarah Schewitz, thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you want to look at her online course, which I'm going to check out right now, it's at coupleslearn.com, and then there's a handy-dandy link right there that says online courses. Thank you so much for being with us. I had a great time talking to you.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If you're interested in learning how to get the absolute most out of your romantic relationships, then you're in luck, because I have put together a free workshop or masterclass, if you will, about 3 secrets that people in happy relationships have discovered. You can view the workshop at mrspirituality.com/3 secrets. Again, it's completely free. Just go there and watch it. It'll help you on your journey, give you some wisdom, some things to think about. The website again is mrspirituality.com/3 secrets. That's mrspirituality.com/3 secrets. It's all yours. Enjoy.